Christy and I and Reese have done actually a couple of these webinars now, and every time I get so many follow-ups, like, when are you going to bring her back on? When are you going to bring her back on? We need more of her insight. So back by popular demand.
Thank you.
If you are at all paying attention, you have realized that outbound sales is getting harder and harder in 2025. And so we are here to kind of talk through some hopefully pretty tactical, tangible things that you can take at least a few of these points away and start implementing these now, right? I think we tend to talk a little bit of shit on other webinars when they pontificate and talk high level, and you end up leaving a webinar without any actual advice. So hopefully you walk away with some next steps here. Christy, before we dive in, do you want to introduce yourself for those that know you?
Absolutely. Well, nice to see you all. My name is Christy Laux. I have been doing sales enablement and RevOps and lead gen and all of that for a decade plus now. Really focused on the lead gen and pipeline generation component of that whole sales process at this moment in time. I started Howdy Sales specifically to help B2B clients, get more opportunities. And what we're doing is taking a very, a modernized approach, not relying on some of the same strategies and tactics as, have been in existence for years now. So I'm excited to talk about it, excited to talk about some of the trends we're seeing. And, obviously here, I don't like talking at people. So if there's a feedback loop too, and people have any insights or comments on what's working, what's not, I'd love to hear that as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, please jump in with any questions, any anecdotes. If you want to push back on anything, a little healthy debate is always a good thing. Yeah. Cool. Okay. You've probably all seen the invite, but we're going to talk through some of these sort of core problems that I imagine you are experiencing at least one or two of. Okay. I think the obvious, right? Outbound sales is changing. It's getting harder. And one of the topics you're going to hear us talk a lot about is this idea of relevance and irrelevance, right? We're trying to not necessarily focus on this idea of cold outbound versus warm outbound. I think that is no longer an appropriate way to think about this. I think it's about, is your outbound relevant or not? If it's relevant, it likely has a higher likelihood of working, even if it is cold. Especially if you're selling B2B SaaS, which I imagine most or all of you are, there are more decision makers in the buying process, and so there's a lot more scrutiny, right? And then there's this obvious AI component that is just changing every half an hour of every day. So we're going to talk through all of this. There are still some strategies that are working, and these are a few that we're going to dive into, but we're going to dive into quite a bit more. So there's been a lot of focus on personalization and hyper personalization, and especially with a lot of these, new and even updated AI tools. Every outbound email, every landing page, every piece of content you put out there has the capacity and capability of being hyper personalized, saying, hey, Christy and Alex, noticed you're here in the Colorado Front Range. Would love to talk to you about X as it relates to. It's every text you get, every email you get, it's all hyper personalized. And I think, and what I imagine a lot of you are seeing is that that is no longer landing and working. Inserting a personalization token, in 2010 was like the biggest deal ever. And I think it's just not quite landing anymore. So we're going to focus on, again, being relevant, not just being personalized. On one of our discussions, and I have to admit, Reese might have come up with like one or two of these ideas, but we're going to steal them. It's this idea of taking an account down approach and a contact up approach. We're going to get into this, but the general thesis here is an account down approach right, assures that the prospect that you're targeting is actually interested or has the potential to be interested in whatever the thing is that you're buying, right? So trying to find a company milestone that, maybe it's a round of funding, or they're hiring certain types of roles, or they do or don't have a certain type of software that might indicate a need that you have. Then combining that with a contact up approach and making sure that you're talking to the right people at the right account, right? There's this whole idea that we've been talking about around, when you're defining an ICP, it's no longer good enough to say our ICP is, Series A, B, and C, B2B SaaS in manufacturing and healthcare in the US. Like, that's just no longer good enough. It needs to get much more granular so that, again, there's relevance. If you're not already doing this, shame on you, but diversifying your sequences so that you're not solely relying on email, right? We're going to get into some best practices there. And then we're going to get into some sort of tips and tricks around leveraging AI for some pretty specific tools that I imagine you're at least using one of, to accurately predict objections, right? So that you can time your sequences. Okay, I'm going to shut up for a sec. Christy, you want to?
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about just how I've seen prospecting change over, call it the last few years, but I do really think even the last 18 months, there's been a huge shift here. So typically, when we speak to clients just right out the gate, we ask, who's your ICP? Who's your ideal customer profile? And typically that means, like, what are the firmographics around your target account that you want to go after, and the people at those target accounts. So what type of company, what person at that company. Then people want to say, great, this is our ICP. We're going to hit it. Like, we're just going to attack the heck out of it with cold calls and a 13-step email sequence and LinkedIn touch points. And we're just going to go absolutely ham on our ICP because these are the people that we want to sell to. It's not that you can't do it. And I think in some ways, there is something to be said for just getting in front of your ICP and building some awareness so that everyone in the world knows who you are. There is validity there. But for actual pipeline generation, today requires a much more targeted, and I don't want to, I keep coming back to this term, sophisticated approach, but that makes me sound really hoity-toity and annoying. But it does say, you do have to have a much more strategic, refined approach to doing this. So as Alex mentioned, it kind of comes down to two things: the account level. So what buying signals is the company showing? That should be the question you're asking yourself. That may indicate they're a good fit for our product or solution or service. Simultaneously, what buying signals is the individual showing? So, the actual person that we're trying to contact. And knowing those two things, both top down and kind of bottom up, what's the best way to engage them? And when I say way to engage them, I'm talking what's the right message? What's the right medium? How do we really get in front of those people in the most effective and efficient way? From there, we go and do outreach. I'm looking at
so there's a really good question in the chat here. So essentially, the question is, how do we balance, right, going ham and being incredibly targeted and sophisticated with this idea of, that is sort of I don't want to say obvious, but intuitive for companies that are maybe further down the funnel. But if you're still in that brand awareness phase, right? So this company's never heard of you, they've never heard. How do you think about balancing this idea of hyper targeted with brand awareness? That's a really good question.
Yeah, because you need both at the end of the day. Everybody, even established businesses, they still need both, right? My answer to that is what I have found is still using a broader account awareness approach paired with like an intent-based approach, so you can actually see who is like actively searching for your solution or something similar, and like siphoning off that as your strategic, refined contact up approach, while still doing some of those like the bigger, broader account-based messaging, brand awareness. And I can talk more about that too. We'll get to it. But I have found that that's the most logical place, is to say like, okay, we have a huge market. We've got the big red blob there, ICP. What slice of that ICP is actually in market, ready to purchase in like the consideration stage of their buying journey? And how do I get to them? And that's where I'm going to apply that strategy and like ham.
Yeah.
I like this concept of the ham. The ham is
right.
yeah, like that's where I go ham.
So to add like I agree with all that. To add a revenue operations layer to this, because that's my little role here in this conversation. When you're designing your account grading, your lead scoring within your CRM to, again, prioritize the right accounts, the right people at the right accounts. Lauren, since you asked the question, right? If you remember way back in the day, at Conversant, right, and a couple of these other companies, we had this sort of notion of account grade A, B, C, D, and then this like engagement score, intent score of 1 through 4. So you could have like a A1, a B1, a C1, right? So the idea is that you're using these intent signals to essentially say, okay, this is not only an account that is in your ICP, there are buying signals that are happening at this company. Oh, and by the way, you have the right contacts, whoever your ICP is, and they are engaging. They're probably worth this hyper-targeted sequence. Whereas companies that might be very well within your ICP, but aren't showing the buying signals, and maybe you don't quite yet have the right contacts, that would be more suitable for that brand awareness play, right? Because you don't want to burn through your Tam Sam Som, right, before they're ready. And so I think it's just about, from a RevOps perspective, it's about engineering the CRM of the data such that you, the rep, the BDR, the go-to-market team can execute on that when the timing is right. It's a really good question. Okay, in classic Reese fashion, we are behind. So
It's fine. We'll keep going. Yes. So if you do want to go ham, let's say you want to just go hog wild on the cold email, that's totally fine. Like I said, awareness, it's good. There are some things for deliverability just to keep in mind. I think can you get like thumbs up if you guys have struggled with deliverability, or thumbs down, or like you're like, I don't know what we're talking about? Yes.
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So essentially, deliverability, you've needed multiple domains and multiple emails for a while now. That isn't new, but sending from your primary domain is a horrible idea. So just don't ever do that. You want to set up separate domains, set up separate emails. I'm happy to help answer questions on like specifics there if you have them. But I think one of the things I'm really seeing, because I'm still doing it for Howdy Sales, like cold email. I'm applying this to our own business. We are seeing a really big need for private warm-up pools. If you're familiar with warming up emails, you can put them into like instantly and warm up those domains. But the best way it's been explained to me is if you go into a pool that a kid has peed in, you get pee on you. So instantly is that pool. Simply because there are a lot of bad email senders in those warm-up pools. So you do not want to be lumped in, because then you get hit, even if you're good.
One other, I love, I've never heard that before. I love it. I'm gonna start using that. One other point here is do it slowly. Like, I feel like I've said this to, a dozen founders just in the last like couple of months, and they're all like, yeah, but we're gonna move really quickly. And it's like, okay, well, you're missing.
So slow. Send 2 emails the first week per email. Send 5 the next. Like, go so slow that it's painful, but I promise it is absolutely worth it a month down the line, because you will not get hit with the same spam issues. If you are looking for a private warm-up pool to send from, I know use it's called People, PIPL.ai. Fabulous tool. They have those private warm-up pools, and it's like really, really, really good. So check that out. Thanks. The other, I mean, if you can get a dedicated server for sending, that is also highly beneficial. But I do think that as long as you do the warm-up right, you can still get around kind of shared servers and whatnot some of these sequencers use. And then I would always recommend for the first month or 2, send everything as plain text in your outreach. Do not include any HTML, any links, any pictures, any tracking pixels, nothing. You can, in my experience, you can actually start using HTML. Like, HTML is like a normal email, and plain text is going to be everything stripped down to simple text. You can start using those, like sending links, sending like images and whatnot, but only after you have a very good foundation of sending with credible plain text emails. So I've actually used some like video prospecting, but and it's worked, and it's gotten into inboxes, but I use it very sparingly. And I only started it after I saw a good deliverability foundation. So.
Yep. Agreed. Cool.
Okay. This is an eye chart, but kind of going back to relevance. What I am encouraging everyone to do, whether you're a Howdy sales client or not, is think about all of the different signals that would indicate someone is in market or a good fit for your product, solution, et cetera. So what do I mean by that? Typically, when we look at signals, we are looking at like cold outbound over on the left-hand side. So we're looking at, is it a qualified business based on my ICP? Do they fit a certain threshold for revenue or employee size? Are they in a certain industry? So on and so forth, right? That is like only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to looking for signals that are relevant. The next step is we are going to go one level deeper on that relevant piece for that qualified ICP, and say, okay, like, are they fundraising? Are they hiring? Did they recently have layoffs? Like, what's going on at that account that may indicate, like, this would be worth it to reach out to. But I still think that those 2 kind of columns are they lend itself more to cold outbound and not like very warm outreach. So to get into that next level, like warm, more contact-based approach, we want to think about 2 things. We want to think about what are active buying signals. And when I say that, I'm really looking at like, have they been on the website? Have they filled out a form? Have they gone to your website, gone to contact sales, and then not converted? Are they looking for, your solution offsite, meaning they're doing research? Like, is there any third-party scraping stuff you can do? Look at Reddit, use Trigify. Like, I don't know. There's a million ways of doing this right now, but what are the actual buying signals that we can identify?
A couple of like really tactical ways to do this within whatever CRM you're using, HubSpot and Salesforce, right? Did they view your pricing page, right? Yeah. Viewing the homepage is great, but did they view your pricing page is a great one. I think another one is, and this actually just happened to us recently, which was great, was, when they came to your site, were they referred by something like a G2, right? That would show that there is intent to search for the best options for the thing that you're providing, the product or service that you're providing. So it's small things like that that actually end up making the difference between cold outbound and a sort of warm touch point.
Yeah. And by the way, if you need like a way of looking at some of those website visitors or tracking, I mean, I'm going to put a plug in for Vector because they're my friends and I love them and I love their platform. Also really good for de-anonymizing like offsite intent too. So instead of saying like 6sense and Bombora do, like, oh, this Amazon was looking for RevOps. I mean, it'll actually say, which is not helpful at all. It'll say like specifically the person that was searching. So you can get the free tracking pixel and throw it onto your website and start getting this like insight very, very easily and quickly.
We have a couple clients that use Vector and versions of it, and it's
game changing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat here that I want to bubble up for you. So in order to see that level of deliverability, you need tools for outreach. So Instantly, the one that would need to be paired on that front. Is that correct?
When you say paired, what exactly do you mean? Sorry.
Lauren, you might need to come off mute here.
Yeah. Oh, I see you talking, but I can't hear you.
Oh no.
It's fine. Okay. Yes.
Yes. Okay, great.
Yes.
So, for someone who is at an organization that currently does not have any tooling for any of the things that I need to be doing to have a successful sales team,
Right.
great. I need to be pitching internally how to make all of this work. So, do I need, if we're looking at like, let's call it outreach or Gong Engage or whatever, do I need to then pair that with Instantly or whatever in order to understand some of that deliverability? How do those things work together, and how should that come into the strategy that I'm pushing forth to my RevOps team who isn't RevOpsing?
Yeah. This is my personal opinion. I think the big mega tools like outreach.io, the ones that like do it all, be cautious with those because those can really degrade fast on the deliverability front. So I would say like when you're looking at your tech stack, think bigger. And Lauren, if you want to like jump on a call and talk about this, like I'm happy to. There are better infrastructures to put in place than a simple 1-point solution. But you do have to do some convincing to be like, okay, this is what this is going to do. This is what this is going to do. But here's how it all comes together to like give us the foundation that we need.
Awesome. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yes.
Agreed. Yeah. Cool.
Where was I? Oh, the other thing too is like, and this is, I think, really important that often goes or disregarded a little bit. So when I talk to a lot of CROs, CMOs, et cetera, and I ask them, what is your source of best qualified pipeline? More often than not, it's my partners, my referrals, my friends, my mom, my family, my grandma, I don't know, but it's people that we know. Yep. So when we are looking at these signals, we are also taking into account the network signals. So is my old boss connected to another CRO that I think would be a great fit for my product or solution? Can I get a warm introduction to that person? Because even if that person isn't necessarily already in market looking, I probably have a better chance of developing a need with that individual because it came through a trusted source. So that's kind of the last component there that I want.
I can't overstate the importance of network signals as well, right? I mean, it's huge, especially these days where, again, everything is personalized, everything is just for you. Having that, hey, Lauren recommended this, that's going to come with a lot more weight than just some rep reaching out to me, right? So it's huge. Yeah. Okay. Did you want to say something else?
Nope.
You good? Okay, great. So we're going to move into these challenges and solutions now. We're going to kind of move into sort of like a quick pace format here, right? So challenge one that I imagine everybody here is experiencing is declining engagement rates. And this isn't just email opens and clicks. This is just engagement across the board. So engagement rates are just dropping. One of you, Lauren and Chrissy, just recently made a point or asked a question around outreach, sales loft, right? Like these big tools. Like we've had so many, well, I don't want to say so many. We've had quite a few clients that have made the transition to an outreach or a sales loft from one of or the other, or from maybe like the HubSpot sequencing tool or something a little bit smaller. And within a week or 2 or 3, their engagement rates just plummet, right? So just keep an eye on that. Spam filters, right, are getting harder and harder to circumvent, right? LinkedIn restrictions. I imagine at least a good portion of you here, right, saw this was now just maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks ago when LinkedIn absolutely obliterated Apollo. Now, I think the hot take there is Apollo is going to be just fine, I think. But it is an indication that the market is moving towards just tighter restrictions, right? And then again, a point that we just keep making, buyers are overwhelmed with generic and over-personalized outreach. So the very last minute before we got on the presentation, all of these slides said, here's the solution, and I changed it to a solution because there are a million ways of solving this. So a solution, right? This idea of AI-driven intelligence, AI-driven relevance, but also this multi-channel outreach, right? So it's not just the BDR enrolling their ICP prospect into a 14 email sales sequence, right? So there are tools like Lavender. I mean, everyone here has heard of Clay, right? Obviously, there are others, Freckle, right, to again ensure relevance, and taking that account down, contact up approach here is really going to go a long way. Diversification within your outreach playbook, and outreach is not the company outreach, is just your outbound playbook. I actually got this was a first. I actually got outbounded to this morning, and somebody left me a 35-second voice note, and I listened to it. I mean, the offer wasn't that compelling, but it was interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the actual offer was terrible, but it was a new tactic. It worked. That type of thing starts to cut through the noise. I've received a bunch of video DMs, right? Little Loom DMs within LinkedIn. As long as they're not 9 minutes, right? Those tend to cut through the noise. And again, appropriately timed emails, right? So something for Domestique, right? For who we target, right? It's, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Founder, CMO, CRO, Director of RevOps, congratulations on your recent round of funding. I imagine you're getting blown up by everybody under the sun. Here's a free value add recommendation for what you should be doing on the RevOps front for the next 12 months, right? So it's just appropriately timed. And Christy, you mentioned this earlier, maybe not in these exact words, but this idea of passive prospecting, right? So, and Lauren, this was almost directly to your question around the sort of top of funnel brand awareness versus middle of the funnel, trying to get them through your sales process, right? Build credibility through engaging with your prospects on LinkedIn, having your own LinkedIn content. Lauren, again, I've seen you personally do this well, of like, once you get into a company, start to understand the product, the industry, start to create maybe not even a following, but start to create a little bit of authority and thought leadership on what you're talking about, right? So that when people look for, those different solutions, you come up, right? So again, these are all things that you can just start doing now.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks. Another challenge, right? Which is actually admittedly new. This is like, at least our clients are just starting to run into this, and they're starting to get a little stuck here. So, and Christy, I don't know if you're seeing any of this. We're not seeing it for all of our clients yet, but we are starting to see this. So different executives specifically, if the executive is your persona that you're targeting, they're starting to use AI tools and AI virtual assistants to filter outreach that they are receiving, right? So before your content even reaches the persona that you're targeting, these AI bots, whether or not they're good is a whole other conversation, are filtering them out, and we're gonna talk about how to.
Well, yeah, and I think this is, if I can just add a point here.
Yeah, please.
This is where good old-fashioned relationships become super important.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone in the world is trying to scale and grow and do volume, and like there's this mindset, if I can just get in front of as many people as possible, then statistically my at-bats will improve and I will grow my business. But because of this whole AI powered thing, like, well, now you're just spinning your wheels over and over and over again at scale. Well, guess what? The bot's doing the same thing, throwing it right back out into the trash. So like, you do have to really make sure that you're also like handling your relationship, your network, with even greater care and strategy than you have before.
Yeah, I mean, plus two to that. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this is where, this is super old fashioned, but like things like handwritten cards, for a specific type of business, especially if it's like a enterprise B2B, right? Something that we do here is we will send a bottle of wine and a handwritten card to our specific folks that we're going. And it's like, this is not an AI driven thing. This is from Alex and Reese. We are grateful for your time, grateful for your partnership, grateful. Those types of touch points really start to matter.
Yep.
Yeah. So I couldn't agree more with that.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we're seeing on both the marketing and the sales front, right, is this idea of having to sell to the AI to sort of get through that sort of first round of filtering. So on the marketing front, my bet is you're going to start to hear a lot about this idea of GEO, not replacing SEO, but it's going to start being both. So SEO, search engine optimization, right? You want your company, your website to start showing up. GEO is generative engine optimization. It's like, how do you get ChatGPT, for example, to recommend howdy sales, domestique, when somebody is searching for the best attribution model template for HubSpot, right? Same concept here when you're primarily relying on things like email, right? So what do these sort of AI bots filter for and filter against, right? Like, use structured fact-based messaging, like human tone. Again, it was on one of your previous slides, and I think we skipped through this point, but like, all of you are probably using a version of ChatGPT or any one of the LLMs to write some of these sequences and content. That's great. But to steal your line, for the love of God, edit it and have a tone and have a perspective. A lot of folks are not doing that. I mean, the amount of outbound that I am on the receiving end of, or people applying for jobs, and it's like, this was all clearly written by an LLM. It's like immediately.
Yeah.
Gosh.
The LLMs use, especially like ChatGPT, They use very specific syntax and structure and dashes, and like it is so obvious once Windows come through. I do think Claude is a better writer than ChatGPT,
I agree.
but I still, even that as a tool, it's you can spot it from a mile away. So like I'd say it's really good to use it as like ideation.
Yes.
Ask it to create emails, but do not just like copy paste those emails or that message, because everybody can see right through it.
Yeah, totally. This idea of AI, you know, for real-time buyer insights, right? I mean, if you're doing outreach, you're likely relying on some kind of intent tool, 6 Sense, Gong, people. I misspelled that. That's not actually people. It's PIPL, but
yeah,
right. So like, again, ensuring that the message is timely. And then if you're using things like, you know, HubSpot, Sales Outreach, right? They have different versions of co-pilots, right? That it's such a tactical thing, but you can ask, hey, I'm about to jump on a call with Christy. Help me predict objections to be able to sort of get ahead of it and time your pitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Challenge number 3. Again, everyone is experiencing this: tighter compliance and privacy regulations. I think this one's you.
Yeah. Oh man. Google and Microsoft had a friggin' heyday last year. We saw, so last February, Google came out with new rules related to sending to personal email addresses. And newsflash, it wasn't just personal, it was everything. So they clamped down really hard on cold email senders, spammers, etc. Microsoft had a huge thing too. Actually, we saw 2 surges of that. One was last summer, and then the other was last October, where they clamped down hard as well on Outbound. So essentially, these major like email service providers can do whatever they want whenever they want, and they will, in order to kind of course correct the market and make sure that they weed out the really bad senders. So they swing the pendulum really hard, really fast to one side, and over time they'll loosen it back up a little bit, but in general it's still just getting harder. So all that to say, like, you have to have your deliverability infrastructure set up really well, and you have to be constantly monitoring it, because it does change. It used to be that Microsoft was the better email service provider to use for outbound. Now it's Google.
Yeah.
So just, you have to monitor. I would say on the mass, like getting blacklisted, make sure you're using a tool like Glock Apps, Email Guard, check your bounce rate, make sure that you're not getting too many bounces. Like ideally you want to be around a 3% bounce rate, but I've personally pushed the limit a little bit to like 7 or 8% and still been okay. But I would say if you start nearing like 10% bounce rate, you're in like dangerous territory.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to you have to clean your lists. If you can't get a valid email or a valid catch-all, I say don't even touch it. Like, it used to be that you could email like 1% of catch-all inboxes relative to your valids, it'd still be okay. I don't even send to catch-alls anymore.
We're the same. Yeah, we obviously don't do that, but we've just stopped recommending it completely, because it does not work anymore, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah. Like in our cold outbound for Howdy, I'm just like whittling down our lead lists are smaller because we don't include all of those catch-alls, but I don't want to take the hit on the deliverability.
Well, and I think this is probably obvious, but it's worth saying, right? Yes, the volume will be smaller, but the quality will be, in theory, higher. And if you're doing everything else right, the throughput of your funnel, the conversion will be greater, right? So again, it's like, what are you trying to solve for here, right?
Yeah.
And this is a whole other topic, but like, don't get caught up in the vanity metrics of like, well, how many contacts are you enrolling in a sequence, and you have to hit that quota no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the quality metrics.
Yep.
So yeah, we have a question in the chat from Julietta. If I'm mispronouncing that.
I don't know the groove.
What about Groove? Yeah, I have to admit, not on my radar either.
What is Groove or the Groove or whatever it's called? Groove.
Yeah, Julietta, you wanna?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It
Jump
was
in.
easier to unmute than typing. It's a tool that we are about to implement to replace outreach for the same reasons. I wasn't part of the decision of the tool. I don't work particularly with a given company. I work for corporate, and we help other business units to improve their operations maturity. But I wasn't familiar with Groove, and I was hoping that maybe you guys had any tips or tricks there.
It looks like it's like a shared inbox.
Yeah.
They track activity. They have an AI prompter. It was bought by Clary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Clary company. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I don't know much about their deliverability, so yeah, I was wondering how it was compared to outreach.
yeah, I would have to look into it a little bit more. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't
Yeah.
want to give you BS advice, so I'm
I
going to take
get
a
it.
note.
We'll
And-
table it and do some research.
Yeah,
appreciate
we're going to
that.
look into it. Yeah, and I'll also see if any of our clients are using it, and if they are, I'd love to make an introduction so that you can.
Well, that would be great. Thank
work
you.
with it. Yeah. No, I appreciate the question.
Many tools.
Cool. Yeah. Well, it's like what you and I were chatting about, like right before we jumped on. There are just so many tools these days.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you want me to tackle this one, Alex?
Yeah. Please.
Perfect. So this is really what like Howdy Sales is predicated on. So, and it really goes back to the slide that I did speak to, the big one with all the signals.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes down to like really getting active opportunities in your pipeline as fast as possible, really focusing on that signal-based approach is where it's at. So what I've developed, and this is not a pitch, it's just like take this and do what you want with it. We are doing signal stacking. So we're starting with intent data from Vector to say who exactly is in market, whether it's on-site or off-site. That's our initial data set. We're pulling in all of those contacts into Clay. Then we're going through and adding columns and enrichments to find additional signals. So, maybe they're hiring, maybe there's a new leader, maybe there's M&A, maybe we want a really specific AI research column to say, go out and figure out if this company has any projects going with state and local governments, which is, by the way, one of the things we're doing for a client right now, like really, really hyper focused.
Yeah.
Then we're taking all of those signals and we're scoring it individually to get an aggregate score to say like, okay, this lead is super, super in market, right? Or like a really good fit. And they were on our website yesterday. So we can really start like triaging our outreach in a much more strategic way. Now, the really fun part is we're also using a tool called the Swarm, which is a funny name. And it reminds me of like a zombie movie. But anyway, the Swarm allows me to, as like a hub and spoke model, say, okay, I want to reach CROs, CMOs, et cetera, that my connections are connected to. So my second degree. So I can map with that tool, I can map out every one of those people, and I can API hook that into Clay, and it gives me a quantitative relationship strength score that I can then also score for a lead. Now, those leads are not coming from intent, but what they are doing is I can say like, this is a really good person for me to reach out to because they fit exactly what I want. And my colleague is really like has a really high relationship strength with them. So what we're doing is we're taking like all like this big bundle of signals, applying a scoring methodology, and then essentially stack ranking that. So we can say, okay, these are like white glove outreach. This is going into email campaign. This is going into LinkedIn, where well, like wherever we want to put them.
Yeah.
And that's where, yes, thank you. That's what we're really seeing as like an awesome workflow to get to the right people.
Yeah, you walked us through this a couple weeks ago now, and it was very impressive. And it's a very clear way to operationalize everything that we're saying here. So if you're interested in even a version of that, I can't recommend reaching out to Christy and jumping on a working session enough. It was, yeah, it was awesome. Okay, cool. I'm gonna keep moving. I want to make sure we have enough time for a couple of questions at the end. So we are dealing with this, and a lot of our clients are dealing with this because a lot of our clients specifically are selling to enterprise B2B SaaS, and there are just more decision makers that are not in the way, but just involved, and the sort of buying committees are just getting more complex. And so, you know, you probably guessed that like deal velocity is just taking longer and longer and longer, right? So here are just some quick stats, right? Average deals including 6 to 10 stakeholders across the entire sort of deal lifecycle. CFOs, finance departments are just scrutinizing specifically technology purchases more than ever. They need to have a clear understanding of the ROI of what you're selling. And again, I think everybody's experiencing a version of this, unless you're in a insulated industry. And if so, good for you. But deals are just taking longer and longer to close. Your conversion rates might not be dropping, but the overall deal velocity is slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple things here, right? Again, we keep talking about this idea of like account down, contact up. So it's like account-based selling, but also CFO ready business cases. This is something that we're recommending earlier on in the selling process, right? So again, some just like tactical things that you can be doing. AI assisted stakeholder mapping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just saying, oh, we got this MQL from this person, I'm gonna just obsess over outreaching to this one person. Map out what the stakeholder committee looks like, and have different value props based on those different personas, right? You're likely not or shouldn't be selling to a CFO the same way that you're selling to a CMO or a CRO. They're likely going to need slightly different versions of messaging. So as you think about how to, you know, segment your sequences, it could be by your personas. And if you haven't done the persona exercise, it is a pain in the ass, but it is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally worth it. Another thing that we're seeing a lot of, and this, you know, could be because of the macroeconomic environment right now, but pilot programs, right? Slightly smaller contracts to get your foot in the door, as opposed to trying to sell the big multi-year, multi-product enterprise deal, right? That might help you gain some initial traction.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna keep moving because we actually have a chance of ending on time here.
Okay, cool.
This is shocking. Moved the wrong screen. Okay. Outbound fatigue, buyer burnout. We almost didn't include this because we also don't want to be like shooting ourselves in the foot here. But I think the punchline here is not that outbound is not working. Outbound is working if you're doing it well. And again, that workflow that you shared with Reese and I on a screen share, you shared it here. It's like, it works. It just takes more effort and more thought, and more sophistication, to use your word.
Yeah. I think too, one of the things I wanted to call out on this was like, we are still you do not need to sell a meeting in outreach, in outbound anymore. Like everyone knows why you're in their inbox.
Yeah.
Everyone knows, like, you do not need to be like, does it make sense to have a chat next week? Like, cut it with that, because everyone, like, people are so tired of seeing those calls to action. Give them something that is interesting and get out of their inbox, and then come back maybe the next week with something additional that's really interesting, and then get out of their inbox. Like, there is so much fatigue on, yes, like, don't ask for anything until you've established some credibility, you've proven that you have something valuable to share, and like focus there.
Yeah, I plus 3 to that. I mean, this is maybe one of the number one things we see folks get wrong is they do an intro email and then they're asking to jump on a call. Here's a link to my calendar.
Yeah.
If you've been on any of these webinars with us in the past, you've heard Reese, myself, or you say deposit, withdraw, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to bake in time and coordinate likely with marketing or product marketing to add those value add resources. And if you don't have those, maybe, cool it on the idea of launching a net new sequence until you have them.
Yeah. There's a really cool, and I can share this. One of the strategies we're doing is like trying to build, I hate the term lead magnet because that's just so overused, but like to build really high quality things. One of the things we're doing is we are using ChatGPT, Grok, whoever, I don't care. And we're having it analyze our last like 10 discovery calls, pull together the most common objections into like 5 different line items. And then we're prompting it to help us outline a specific like guide, resource, whatever, to address those objections. And that's what we're pushing out as like a lead magnet. So we're like reverse engineering our content based on our actual conversations with our prospects, because what the prospect is saying, that's what people care about. So if we can then have content and like resources that help with that, well, now we've just built credibility with the prospect before they even have an objection, right? So that's a kind of a cool way that we're trying to engineer our own resources, right? That we're providing.
Yeah. That's awesome. We got a couple clients that are doing a less sophisticated version of that.
So sophisticated.
Yeah. And it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it totally works.
Yeah. I think we've talked about a lot of this already, but really getting into, I think maybe a couple of things to call out here is like, when we talk about trust first selling, community, like, this doesn't mean you have to go set up a huge community thing, like, formally. People on social these days, people are buying from people, not from companies. So like,
Yes.
If you have a LinkedIn page for your company, all that really does is prove that you're a credible company.
Yeah.
What people are following is you as an individual. So like, you do have to put out like interesting ideas, and that's what's going to be what drives people to the company. And they're just going to go like spot check your LinkedIn company page.
The marketer in me loves this, and I wish he could be saying this directly to Reese, because I'm constantly asking him to start posting on LinkedIn, and he just doesn't.
No, people don't want to do it. You got to throw yourself out there.
Yeah.
It can feel not genuine, but I think if you make it your own voice and you don't try and be copy paste of every other guru that's out there, like people pay attention. And you don't have to just post about business. Like, I posted about my embroidery project over the weekend, and I got like way more like reach with that than I did like the webinar reshare. Like, just be a human and post interesting ideas, and people will gravitate to you. So that's where I really think like this kind of community voice approach comes into play.
Yeah. hot take, be a human being.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, this is maybe the first webinar we've ever done where we're going to end on time. There's a theme here. Reese is on vacation. Key takeaways, right? Outbound truly is not dead. It's just evolving. And if you are not tweaking your tactics, your strategies, the way that you're measuring its effectiveness, you really are going to get left behind. AI compliance, buying behavior, right, is changing. Again, we need to get ahead of that. And again, focus on relevancy, intent, and building trust, right? And I wish we had a slide here, hot take. Just remember to be a human being. Like,
Yep.
I really do think that at the end of the day, it's that people buy from people, not from companies. So we got a lot of great questions throughout. This was awesome. And Christy, I threw them all your way. So you had the hard job of answering all of them, but thank you. If anybody has any questions right now that they want to jump into, we can obviously stay on for an extra few minutes.
Yeah.
But if not, thank you, everybody.